to The Balancing Act. Now here's your hosts, Jamie Wonko and Joe Vitale.
Well, hello and welcome back, Balancing Act podcast listeners. If you are following us on YouTube and you're watching this episode, you're going to notice that the setting is a little bit different, and the camera is a little bit shaky. But we're going to do our best as the tiki bar floats by me. So I hope, and so does Jamie, hoped that your summer is amazing and underway. I am down with my family, one of my favorite places, Long Beach Island. And snuck away to record a little bit of an introduction for our first best of episode for season 1. I'm really excited to bring you some content from this past season in a best of format. These are great episodes that you could share with friends that you might want to have give a listen to the podcast, as well as fellow teachers and colleagues that you think might benefit from the message. So we don't have any new content, but we do have some new material that we're putting together for you guys to give a listen to. So we have 3 guests. This is our best of guest advice episode from our best of series from season 1. We're first going to be heading back to our interview with educator Andrea, and she's going to talk to us about how it's very important to find your people and not be afraid of change, especially if you're young in the career. We also have Dr. Tyler Tarver, who's going to talk a little bit about AI and how schools can better leverage it both inside and out of the classroom. And lastly, we have my teacher face, Jessica Hawk, who's going to talk about depth and not breadth in regards to how she teaches her AP English class. So these are some great pieces of advice and some wonderful stuff that you could pass along definitely to people that you think might want to give a listen to our podcast. So sit back, relax, and enjoy these clips from our season 1 best of guest advice.
All that, and now we've gotten very used to doing everything digitally, and I kind of see it as that same kind of transition where, the teachers that are going to be going into the classroom are going to be very familiar with a lot of the technological tools that are going to hopefully make their lives a little bit more streamlined so they can focus on, the things that really matter and be able to have that balance that they need.
So, and that's one of the reasons that I so wanted to have you on with us today, is because I know that was part of your doctoral research with like how, new teachers in the classroom need a support system. It doesn't need to necessarily be anything specific. It can be organic, where you have a team of teachers that are supporting you and helping you and stuff like that. I'd really like to hear your take on that. And also it's, I was recently visiting my goddaughter, and shout out. Hi, Lindsay. How are you? I know she listens. And I had actually said to her, like, oh, we're having you on. And one of the things that we're going to talk about is she is currently doing her senior field experience in school with elementary for 3rd grade. And she's been talking about going to a different school. And she already has like this group that, she might get hired there. And we're like, you already have people that are going to support you and help you along the way to help lift you up and give you the tools that you might need in the classroom. What would be like 3 pieces of advice you might give her as she starts her journey as a first-year teacher with 3rd graders?
I mean, the team makes or breaks the experience. We do spend a majority of our time with the students, but having a team around you can determine whether or not you feel like this profession is sustainable or not. That's what I saw with all of my research. It wasn't the principal, it wasn't the student population, it was the colleagues who were there or weren't there that really kind of predicted whether or not the teachers could, hang out for longer than just a single year. So that would be the number one is, seek out that community. And as part of that, have at least one day a week that you eat lunch with them. As inconvenient as it can seem sometimes, making sure that you have that time to just talk to other professionals, to vent, to hear, what they have to say, to get advice, all of that is incredibly important. The second thing I would say is to be very unapologetic about the boundaries that you set to protect who you are as a person outside of school, especially if she is single unmarried without kids, that tends to be that group tends to be the group of people that get asked for all of those unpaid additional duties, those adjunct duties that, because they're like, oh, well, you don't have kids, therefore you could do XYZ. Your life and who you are is every bit as important, as valid as other people who have, 5 kids at home. Yes, there's different responsibilities there, but you should not apologize for saying like, oh, actually, like I am going to play tennis and I fulfilled my obligations at work. I'm not going to go and take tickets at the basketball game or fill in the blank, whatever, unpaid duty it is. So I think that's another really important one, is be very clear with your boundaries. And the third one would be, if you find yourself in a situation where you feel like the team is not there, that the school culture is just not what it should be, before leaving the profession, try a new school. I know so many teachers that have messaged me and said, man, my first school did not have the culture I was hoping for, but when I changed, it completely shifted my perspective on teaching. That, I mean, could completely change everything about your working life. And admin can make or break a school culture for sure. So if you just can't stand the admin because they're micromanaging and you feel like they are, not supporting you, then go to a different school. Find a school where you have a team, where you feel supported, where you have an admin that you can go to and be like, hey, I'm struggling with this situation in my classroom. Because I've had that at most of my schools where I really felt like I connected really well with admin, and it made it so easy and not nerve-wracking at all when they came to observe me. I'm like, hey, look at you, you're here, good for you, let's have fun. Like, just it makes it so much less stressful, as opposed to feeling like it's a gotcha thing where like you're showing up and all of a sudden now, oh my gosh, I'm so stressed because I'm afraid that you're just looking for things to catch me on. So that would probably be the 3 I'd advise.
What's interesting about your second piece of advice is that no one gave it to us. So we are the, older generation of teachers who were not taught boundaries. And now there's a growing resentment for people within our age group of the new younger teachers who say no to everything, because we lived the first 10 years plus of our teaching career doing everything. And now that we're, a little bit older in the profession, we've kind of turned and said, well, it's your turn, but they're coming in very much with a strong sense of like, nope, I'm not doing that. And so there is a bit of a divide, and for a while it was that. And then it was also, when I first started teaching, everyone was much, much older than me. If I was 22 when I started teaching, and everybody was somewhere in their 50s, 60s, getting ready to retire, there was this huge age difference. And for all of us who sort of swung in together, then all of a sudden we became veteran teachers at 35 or 40. So we weren't that far away in age kind of from the younger, newer teachers. But it is interesting because I would say there is definitely a resentment of, right, Joe? Do you get what I'm saying?
And a great callback here would it be the coffee ice cream or the black raspberry ice cream? Because you always get both, and both of those together. So which one would it be if you had to choose a flavor?
Coffee.
Coffee.
So,
Dr. Tarver, do we have an opinion
Tarver,
on this matter? Do we have what's our flavor here?
What's your favorite?
You, me, same boat. I'm talking coffee. We rowing the same way.
Okay.
Sprinkles, no sprinkles.
No sprinkles. I don't need a surprise when I'm in it. I want it smooth, I don't want to be like, oh, am I eating a Tic Tac? I don't need that.
That's fantastic. As we know, I'm a trier, so I don't really have a flavor because I try everything. And there you go, rolling your eyes, but I like to try things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, always. I love the coffee and black raspberry combination. It always makes me laugh. Anyway, I know I got away from the topic there for a second, but it's very interesting to see like how teachers and students are going to leverage this technology. I know on our student Chromebooks right now, it's blocked because I don't think anyone understands how we can leverage it better in the classroom. And if you were, let's say, Jamie and I in our district, what do you think we would need to say to our upper level administration to say, okay, we need to unblock this and leverage it? What are like 1 or 2 things that we could use as arrows in our quiver to get that to happen?
Well, first thing I would say is basic. It's inequity, because how many kids in your school have data plans on their phone? So they have access to it because they can switch over to data, be off the Wi-Fi, and use ChatGPT. So now really you've only limited it for the kids that can't afford cell phones with data
Okay.
plans.
Yeah.
So one, there's that. And two, you're not teaching them anything. Like, you're not teaching them not to cheat. You're just teaching them to do it outside of the classroom. I would rather be able to view it and observe it and like let them know, like, hey, here's when you can use it. Here's when you can't use it. This is plagiarism. This isn't. You know, it's the same thing we're teaching about Google search, Wikipedia, copying out of Encyclopedia Britannica. Like, you have to teach them what's cheating and what's not. My recommendation, the words I always like to include in policies, and I was doing a session, this is like first of the summer, I was doing a session at a co-op, and somebody was like, do you have like an example policy? And I was like, no. I said, but give me 30 seconds. And I had ChatGPT write its own example policy
That's
for a
fantastic.
classroom and then for a district. And I even, for one training, I did that, and I actually attached their district, and it found the policy number it should go under. And as someone that used to have to do the policies for the district, that's convenient. You know what I mean? And it found it and put it in there. Now, here's what I recommend. Here's the two things that I highly recommend they include in there is, one, in the policy, it says any type of AI, however you want to, umbrella this, it can only be used with prior teacher approval. Okay. Prior teacher approval. That's your key. Because if a student uses it, well, I thought I could use it here. Nope. You're supposed to ask me first, and then I can guide you through what's allowed and what's not allowed. Okay. So prior teacher approval is one of your phrases that pays. And then the other one that I really like is include something in your policy about how, because they're going to cheat whether you get blocked or not. So the other policy you need, whether they say we're never going to do it, cool, you still need this policy. You ready? Have it to where you have some wording in there where every assignment is subject to a verbal review worth, the points of the assignment. So essentially, I don't know how you would want to word that. I'd get ChatGPT to clean it up for me. But it's like, if I assign something to students and I read it, I'm going to be like, ooh, Johnny didn't write this. You know what I mean? As the teacher, like, one, the more you use ChatGPT, the more you're going to know it was ChatGPT versus a kid. All right. No matter how, much they do it. Plus, your student's writing. Whenever they go from looks like they're texting their buddy to John Grisham, we know there's an issue. They're using something. And so what I tell people is, you read the paper, you're like, this looks like it was not written by him. You ask him to step outside. You're like, hey, Johnny, first off, great job on your paper. That was incredible. Could you tell me what your thoughts are? You wrote this, right? Yeah, of course I did. All right. Give me your thoughts on it. Tell me about your paper. They're not going to be able to tell you anything if they didn't do it. Now, here's what some teachers said. They were like, well, what if they know you're going to do that? So they go in and they study what ChatGPT wrote, and they analyze and they memorize and they learn all of it. And I looked at them. I was like, well, then checkmate. You won, because they learned the information. Like, that's what your goal is. What is your goal for the assignment? And then how do we help students reach that goal? Okay. And so that's my thought. Throw that in there. Tell the district, this is the internet, but better. Like, the internet's not a fad. Okay. It's here to stay. We have to learn how to deal with it and navigate it. You guys talked about, valid resources, helping students find valid resources online. My dissertation, there's chunks in it where I had to research peer-reviewed research studies on the validity of online resources. Students are going to YouTube, whether teachers recommend it or not. Students are going there to learn what they don't get in class. Yeah. Okay. Students are more successful when teachers guide them on how to find good resources. That is a skill set that is imperative for educators to help students do better. Help them, guide them. Because guess what? Some other research studies found around a third, around 33% of the top 100 videos on important topics is actually done by professionals. That's 2/3 of the videos in the top 100 that kids are searching and watching and learning from aren't even done. They're done by companies. They're made by creators. They're not based in somebody who knows what they're talking about to the level that we do as professionals. So find a way to teach these kids how to find valid resources, valid sources, and be able to cite that and use that to their advantage and help them get better.
What do you suggest to the teacher that's like, okay, you got to get prior approval, and I need to be guiding them through this and teach them how to use this particular thing, whether it's ChatGPT or Bard? Like, how do they train themselves? Do you think that there are ways for them to go about learning this in their, during their time when they have the capacity to learn it?
Yes, I highly recommend anybody trying to learn it. I call it a prompt a day. Do at least one prompt a day. Try it for anything. It can be for your job, for what you're working on. It can be on stuff you already had. It can be for your life. Go in and be like, I want to plan my afternoon. I've got from 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. I need to get this, this, and this done. I got to run these errands to these locations, and I have to do this, this, and this. Plan it out for me and put it in a table format, and have it do it. Go to your fridge. Look at all the stuff you have. Go into ChatGPT. Say, hey, I've got all these things in my fridge. What can I make? Give me a recipe. You can go in
that
and
is the
use
wildest
it.
thing. That is the wildest thing to do, by the way. If you have
It's
not
insane.
done that, do that.
Yes, it's crazy. And then try this. Be like, do it for a keto diet. Like you can pick any diet you want. You can pick the amount of calories you want, and then it'll build it around what you want as your specifications. And so it's insane. I highly recommend just try one a day. What I always tell people is try to stump it. That's what I want you to do. Try to do something so specific, so detailed. You're like, there's no way it can, write me this 150-word blog post in the style of, whatever, Stephen King about, English literature between 1850 and 1875. Like it's literally try to stump it. That's what I ask people to do. So that's my suggestion.
I've been one of the things that and Tyler, I don't remember if it was you or if it was another content creator. And if it was another one, I apologize for talking about someone else.
Okay, I'll allow it this one time.
I'm forgiven. So there was this one particular post that I remember seeing over the summer, and it was somebody like, okay, try this. You put the prompt in. I'm creating a new business on X. I'm gonna have a donut shop. Ask me 20 questions to get a better understanding of my business to help me create a marketing plan. And then it literally is asking questions and learning about your business and what you're able to do and how you're going to market. It is fascinating just to play around with it and see the potential for learning that it has and how it can assist you in your everyday life. It really is something that can be very groundbreaking.
Absolutely. Like I used it because if you do, so ChatGPT 3.5 is the free one, but you can pay like $20 a month for 4. And I was like, I use this more than I watch Netflix, and I pay $22 a month for Netflix. So I'm paying for it. So I do 4. And with that, I can actually put spreadsheets in. So I downloaded a spreadsheet of all my analytics for all of my 2,000 plus TikToks. I imported it in there and I asked it to analyze my engagement factors, tell me 30 different potential video titles that would rank highly with SEO and would engage my audience, and then give me 10 different series I could start doing on a weekly basis to help teachers, based on what I have. And it's analyzing my data.
I think my head just exploded. Exploded.
It did it. And it did it. It analyzed it, gave me a list, and I copy pasted. I'm working out of it. You can literally, I did one the other day. I saw it and I related it to what I do. And it was like, list the dreams, the desires, the frustrations, and something else of people in this profession, and then put it on a scale based on like what they care about, what they don't, all this stuff. And then you can make videos based on that to help engage the audience. And I've been doing it, and I see results out of it. It's insane.
I am protective of my students, especially, girls who will come to me with boyfriend issues. I'm like, give me that phone and I'm writing the breakup. But yeah, there is some of that. But what really opened my eyes to that other side without having kids was when my nieces and nephews were getting into 5th and 6th grade, and they were in accelerated classes. And I saw on the weekends, they had to leave the family functions because they had so much homework. They had so much that they had to do, and they were disgruntled and they were reluctant. And I had to really reevaluate my view of work on the weekends and work on holidays and work, for at home. And I give no homework now, none. And I teach AP literature and composition. And people are like, how can you? Well, I have a 95% passing rate for the past 4 years. And you don't have to bog your kids down with 8 million tasks. I always say I'd rather have depth than breadth. So many people say, my kids read 20 books this year in AP Lit. And I'm like, no, they didn't. They did not read 20
No.
books. They talked to their friends about it, or they spark noted it, or they watched a video about it. But I tell my kids, you have 2 major works outside of class, you have 3 major works with me. You can do 5. And that's it. So I really had to reevaluate, why am I giving this burden outside of class where it's not a controlled environment? Many of my kids have jobs, many of them bounce from house to house. Is it effective work if I'm not there to help them and to answer things? And my answer was no when I reflected on it. So people are like, you don't give homework in AP? No. You know when they're going to do it? When they're in the parking lot waiting to come in the morning, or during the unit lunch, or they're going to ask their friends what was on there. And it's just not a good measure of what they can do. My opinion, totally my opinion.
No, I don't think that's the wrong opinion. I've gotten away from, like, I've done it in various ways. I've given like a homework assignment on a Monday and it's due on Friday, and you budget your time as to when it's going to get done to
Yeah.
try and work on time management, organization, executive function, that kind of stuff. I've reserved, Jamie, we've talked about this how many times over the last couple of days. I've, like, I give assignments in class. Okay, what we don't finish in class, we have to finish for homework.
Yes.
And then like, that's
You know what
also,
happens in middle school when you assign something on a Monday, and you have them do it on Friday? You have some students who don't do it. And then you have other students who freak out and spend 3 hours doing it on Monday.
and she's experienced the same thing. And the assignment that I give them, by the way, is not like,
I don't know what
Yeah,
your work is.
yeah.
I'm actually saying
no,
that as a
I know
mom,
you, and I know you've
because
seen it. Yeah.
my own children are the ones who freak out and sit for 4.5 hours in one night to do the homework,
Well,
because then they're not going to sleep, worrying that they have an assignment to do, that it's just their own self-imposed, I want to have everything, a certain
Yeah.
way. And I'm very much like that. I mean, clearly it's hereditary. I'm very much like that. I don't like to have a lot of things hanging over my head. I am not a procrastinator. And so the homework thing, I agree with you, Jessica. I reevaluated. We had a principal years ago who was getting his doctorate, and he did a ton of like article sending to us and just reading and research, and so much about how really homework is not beneficial, and just sold it in such a way that it was the first time I can remember this. Gosh, I mean, this probably has to be at least 15 years ago at this point, where I had never really looked at it that way before, and it makes so much sense
Makes so much
to
sense.
me. But yeah.
But it's not how we were trained. It's
No.
not how we
No.
were, I was trained on how to dress. I was trained on, if you find yourself accidentally patting a kid on the back, always move your hand in an upward direction. Homework is essential to reinforce the skills. I went to Catholic school and was taught by nuns. So I have a lot of that ingrained in me, where it was expected to come home, get a snack, sit at the dining room table for 3-4 hours and do my work. And was that effective? No, it was a fear tactic.
And we also work in not that there's not deeply religious pockets all over the place of different religions, but we happen to have a lot of students. I think our school is like 72% Asian. So between our Hindu population, our Islamic population, there's also a lot of responsibility for them for
Yes.
prayer.
Yes.
And it
And
is
it's Ramadan.
right. And so right now it's Ramadan. Outside of that, though, there is a lot of
Sure.
education happening for them. So many of them do not have time to do whatever the homework might be for school, because they're involved in such deep religious studies.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
one of my other jobs is tutoring kids in Saudi Arabia. I'm a college counselor for them, top tier students in the senior classes across the kingdom who are trying to get into Ivy League schools. And when I meet with them, they are a bundle of nerves, because there is so much pressure on them from the family, from the community, from the religious community, to perform at such a level at all times.
I think that's another boundary that
Yeah.
I think, when we talk about how teachers can set better boundaries, that's something to definitely think about, as like, what you're assigning. Is it purposeful? Is it like, assigning however many units of IXL that is, or whatever diagnostic we're using that is, and everybody's covering their ears because, like, I had a friend of mine who reached out to me the other day, and his only message to me, I hadn't heard from him in like a week, and his only message to me was effing IXL.
Yeah.
He's like, that's it. And I tried to explain to him,
3,000.
I tried to explain to him two things. Number one, and I'm going to say this, and I know that there's teachers in the school district that I work in that might hear this. We're not using it right. It's a diagnostic. It's not meant to be for a classwork grade. And students getting a completion grade of 100 does not prove mastery on anything. But they also, the way it's scored is you get to a 90 and then you got to get 10 in a row correct. And then you get 100. Yay. And I can't tell you how many times I sat with my daughter, who's a very bright kid and she works hard. And it would be like 95, 96, 97, get it wrong. Go back down to an 89 and then get all the, go all the way back up and then get it wrong. Then all the way back up. And I'm like, I would close the computer and be like, walk away. The tears are enough. Walk away. Like, I know she knows the material. It's things like that. Like, that's not purposeful. That's not intentional. That's not giving them anything that's going to like have them deeply think about content or anything like that. So, but you're right. That is setting up, like, teachers need to also look at, like, okay, that's a boundary that I can set, not just for myself, but for my students. So they don't understand that outside of here, they should be doing 2, 3, 4 hours worth of work. Because, and Jamie, I've heard you talk about your kids coming home, and I'm like, that is way too much for a sixth grader. High achieving kids.
I say fail. I do. I said, well, fail. Like, oh, don't say fail. And he's like, well, you could fail. And they, like, I won't be mad. I won't be upset. Dad won't be upset. You'll be okay. The sun will rise. It's like, it's just because they put so much pressure on themselves to, sort of, and then I think sometimes certain things with education are going, everyone wants to say what's wrong and what's happening. And I also think, when I was in kindergarten, we played, right? We had a kitchen and we played, and then we learned how to read by the middle to end of first grade. And now, now we're asking them to do all of these things younger and younger and younger. So even, this pressure filled, like, a lot of kids, by the time they're 15 and 16, they're done with it. They've, or they're like in this pressure cooker situation of getting into college and doing all of these other things. And it's just like, okay, it's all right.
It's a lot. And you don't really get to know kids when you're just going in bell to bell. And I know teachers who do that and they do it very well. That's fine. It's never been my style. Yeah. They set the boundary of, you have to be in on time. You have to do this. This is when it ends. And this is when, for me, I need those few minutes for my kids to talk and yap. Anybody who's been a teacher through COVID, when I hear talking and noise now, I'm like, oh, thank goodness you're talking to each other.
Okay, so there you have it, everybody. That is our best of season 1 top guest advice here on the Balancing Act podcast. We hope that you enjoyed those short clips and their revisiting of those interviews. We really encourage you guys to share this out with colleagues, friends, or family that you think might benefit from the message of our podcast. We have regular content returning at the end of August and some other best of episodes for you guys here this summer. So we hope that you enjoy some rest and relaxation as well as time with your friends and family. As always, Jamie and I, we appreciate you. You'll see here introducing our next best of episode, and we look forward to continuing our journey with you here on Balancing Act Podcast.
Listening to the Balancing Act podcast. Have a topic we should discuss? Drop us a line at thebalancingactpod@gmail.com.